Welcome back. Behind me here is my 1949 JI Case LA tractor. In the previous two videos, we got the engine loose on this, and in the very last one, we got it running. And I don't know how long it sat prior to that. But in today's video, I want to tie up a bunch of loose ends on this tractor, and hopefully we can put it to work. A few things got to get done. We got to make new valve cover gasket. Got to set all the valves. The clutch brake needs adjusted. We got to button up the starter. Air cleaner needs cleaned out. Charging system gone through. Fuel tank cleaned out. Carburetor cleaned. The brakes do not work. See if we can get those going. And maybe we can see this thing in action. I don't think they make cast iron valve covers anymore. Probably for good reason. The valve tappet lash on these is 18 thousandths cold for both the intake and the exhaust. I've got the plugs out and a bar through the crank so I can rotate it over as I adjust them. So the easiest way for me to do this and keep track of it is I just watch while one valve completely compresses. Generally your other valve will be ready to set. So we've got number one exhaust valve going down. Wait until it goes all the way to the bottom, and then you should be ready to set this intake valve. You just slowly adjust it as you slide your feeler gauge in between the valve stem and the rocker arm, and it'll start to catch a little bit of drag. Sometimes on older engines where the rocker arms are worn, there'll be a pattern and it'll give you a false reading. So you got to make sure that's fairly flat all the way across the rocker arm. Or if you get over to one side or the other, it'll give you a false sense of what is the proper gap. That's pretty good there. Make sure your screw doesn't turn as you tighten it up. And then just double check. You should be able to just move it through there. I've just got a prick punch and a pen, and side by side they're about the same width as the flange on my valve cover. So I'm going to tape these together, and that'll give me the distance to trace around this for my inner diameter of my gasket. It just takes a little bit of time, but that's a heck of a lot cheaper than buying one of these. I think it was $30 for just one of these gaskets, if you could find it. don't know if these had gaskets on them or not, but it doesn't look like there's room for any. So we'll try it without. So I'm sitting here, I'm gonna take this carburetor off, and I look back here and there's somebody added an extension. So right here, tip of my finger, that bolt I believe is where this yoke should be on, and someone added another piece to lengthen it, which, if I'm thinking correctly, would make it run slower. I don't know. I think I'm gonna not put that back on, but I'll save it if anybody informs me on why they would do that. These are a pretty good sized carburetor. I believe that's the same one that I'm running on my Alice Chalmers UC. Not quite as big of an engine as this though. That's only around, I think it's 318 cubic inches. This is 403. Very sturdy intake setup here. A lot of tractors would have just had a tube with a piece of rubber hose and some clamps, but Case went the extra mile and bolted it all together. And these engines ran an oil bath air cleaner, so the air comes from the top through the bottom, pulled back up through the center and out this side. And as it gets pulled around, it gets pulled through a bath of oil. And it's effective, but pretty messy. And does require pretty constant maintenance. And in typical Case fashion, this whole thing is cast iron. These are typically pretty nasty when they haven't been changed in a while. This is kind of neat. This one actually has removable screens, and this probably has some of the hydraulic oil that we pushed through the cylinders. Yeah, there's some sludge in the bottom. It's probably settled out so long that the oil will be clean looking. It's not too bad, but there's goo and sludge in the bottom. This filter also has a removable screen up in here, which a lot of them don't. They're just welded in completely, so we'll pull that out and clean it as well. Well, I have everything cleaned up here. It really wasn't that bad. These are the mesh that were on the upper side of this. I resoldered this piece. It was pulled apart. Cleaned out the part that goes into the carburetor. And there's more mesh up in here, but it's all really clean. Either this thing didn't do a ton of field work, which maybe not recently, or somebody cleaned that out not too long before it not ever running again. But I'll get all that put back together and we'll move on to the carburetor. Then you just fill this bottom tray back up to where it says oil level. Put the gasket on top and back up she goes. I kind of find it a bit comical how heavy duty everything on this tractor is. Like every other tractor you find, this would be like just pressed rolled steel, and this thing is all cast iron and has gaskets in it. Yeah, kind of neat. Now on to this carburetor. Looks like somebody's been in here not too long ago. When we were running it in the last video, it had to have choke to stay running. So guessing something's a little plugged up in the main jet. Well, after some finagling, I got it apart and it still ruined the gasket. It's not terrible, but it's enough to cause the issues we were having. So get this cleaned up and see about making a new gasket. Well, since I don't have a gasket for this carburetor and it's a Friday and I probably won't get one till a week from now, I'm just gonna make one. Carburetor gaskets are usually pretty complicated. A lot of times they'll cover little holes and ports on the inside. This one's not too bad, it's pretty simple. Just the outer shape, this inner part, and then these two holes here. So I'm just gonna color this up, make a transfer onto this paper, and stamp and cut it out. Hopefully it works. Well, let's see how we did. Boy, that looks like it's gonna work to me. I will wait till I put the carburetor together to trim the outside, because it gets so thin I don't want to tear it, but I do believe that'll work. Luckily these jets are all different sizes, so you don't have to worry about too much when you take it apart, getting everything back. You'll know. Now, this carburetor is in pretty nice shape. Sometimes you can just tell when people have been in them over and over through the years. This one's not all abused, which is a good sign. I've been debating on whether or not to take this thing off, and I think I'm going to. It's definitely a homemade piece. Well, it's just an extender for that throttle. I don't know if you'd have any idea why that would be on there. Leave a comment. Because the way I see it is, it's slowing the engine down, because if you had the lever up here and that was the end of your throw, that's all you would get. But if that throw was out here, then it would move it back here and it wouldn't allow it to get full throttle. So, I don't know. Maybe it'll be obvious when we start it up why they did that. The upper gasket was in good shape. I ended up having to make a new one down here. After about 10 minutes of fighting it, I got it up in there. I would be lying if it didn't make me nervous about how tight it was. But nothing else moved. It's the way it came apart. Alright, everything's tight. Don't have a pin handy at the moment, so I'll just make one out of this bolt here. This will be better. That's better. Nice smooth operation. Now we got that going, we gotta get that fuel tank cleaned out. It's not bad at all. Let me see if I can show you what it looks like inside. See, it looks honestly really good in there. But it's just got, and this is more than it had, because I put some fuel in it to flush it out. But I think I'm just going to drain that down and add a little more and flush it and call it good. Love to see how nice this tank is. This is definitely one of those jobs that you want some gloves on for, because that varnished old gas does not come off your hands very well. I'm hoping to contain this and get it to run into this drip pan. Oh, it's actually, the valve's working. It's flowing. Ugh. Boy, that's brown. Let that drain out, and then I'll take the screen out of this, because that's draining pretty slow. Well, that would explain why it wasn't draining. You can't even see through that. Not much of the rubber gasket left. The screen, oh, the screen is MIA, no go. Get this thing cleaned up. Oh, it's nasty. A look at the underside of this one. She's got a little crust to her, but she should clean up. Dug through my stash and I found a screen. A new gasket. And got the bowl pretty clean. gonna use this garden sprayer wand to flush the inside of the tank and kind of push it all to this corner, and hopefully that will help get most of it flushed out. Instead of just dumping fuel in the middle and spreading out to the edges, this I can at least push it to where the drain is. Fresh gas inbound. There's enough sediment in the tank. I was able to tip it up, but there's too much sediment and it's clogging up the filter. So I'm just gonna take this off, pull the sediment bowl out, and drain it directly out of the bottom of the tank. That'll drain it faster and help flush it better. Probably should have had a funnel ready for that. Well, I'm gonna have to pull the tank off anyhow, and that ring around the bottom has got some debris in there that's stuck to the bottom, and it's slowly breaking loose. But it's just going to cause me problems over time. So I'm going to pull it off and slosh some steel BBs around in the bottom and rinse it out that way. But not too big a deal. It's just actually 2 more bolts in that dash, and this umbrella mount will come off. And I think it'll pick right off there. Man, it'd be nice to wash that before I put the tank back on, wouldn't it? I got pretty much all the loose stuff off of it. Now I'm just going to hit the real soiled spots with the heavy grease with some degreaser. We'll pull this weight off. This is just an oddball F&H weight, which works out pretty good because I think I have that exact same weight laying around somewhere that needs a match. Well, it didn't end up perfect, but got a lot of the crud off of it. Didn't realize it looks like they stamped the serial number here too, 5329283. I don't know if that matches. 5329283. Yeah, so I guess assume that's the original engine. We'll get it pushed back in the barn and finish up what we were doing. I also pressure washed the hood, the fuel tank, and ended up washing inside the tank. Got it all dried out now. It looks pretty darn good. Don't think that should give us any trouble. While looking things over, I found a couple spots in the wiring where all the lights get bonded together here, and a little spot here for the same thing where the lights were tied together. We'll get these cleaned up and protected. They're not really corroded, so I'm going to seal them up with some liquid electrical tape and some good Scotch electrical tape. This is a couple years old, so it's a little stickier than it normally is, but I'm going to goop some of this liquid electrical tape on and let it dry. That'll help seal it up. Now this tractor really should be rewired, and I'll do that eventually, but I'm just trying to prevent a problem currently until I get the chance to rewire it. I'd like to get it out and run it a while, because some headlights are probably the least of my worries here, but I still don't want anything accidentally shorting out. I cleaned up the spark plugs and checked the gap on all of them. They're good, so I'll hopefully put these in for the last time for a while. With the fuel tank out of here, I can see the clutch brake pretty good. And it does need adjusted because it's not working at all right now. So this is the clutch brake lever, and there's a pad right here that rubs on this drum. And all you do is tighten or loosen these set screws right here. And I need to bring it up, so I will tighten the upper and loosen the lower. There is still a decent amount of pad there. It's not into the rivets yet. That may be on the list to replace eventually. Ooh. Don't know what the spec on side-to-side movement of that is, but seems like a lot. That feels pretty good. Now to wrestle the fuel tank back up here. Put the felt pads back down. Well, that's a big tank. I think it said it was 31 gallons. It's a lot. Got the sediment bowl cleaned up a little bit. Threads sealed up. This will be nice. Shouldn't have to worry about any fueling issues now. The line here that was on it is not the greatest, but I'm gonna just leave it for now. Remember, temporary becomes permanent. That's the way it works. Bring this back around. I bent it out originally to clear. I'm gonna dump some fuel in the tank, and I'm gonna leave the carburetor petcock open so everything should make it through and drain down out of the carburetor. Oh, look at that nice clean fuel flowing good. Clean fuel flowing out of the carburetor. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. With the slow cranking that this had, I want to make sure that the ground's clean. Maybe. Probably clean these terminals up as well. Well, I broke out the electrical tape, turned this into a brand new cable. Looks awfully nice. Sure, it won't work any better. I need to hook this wire back up on the generator. Still working with a small 6-volt. Alright, we should have power. So I think I'd like to get it fired up. So we'll give it some spark, give it some throttle. I don't know if it needs a choke or not. Our neutral, clutch is disengaged. to hunt if you let it do that. Some air in here. Not oil pressure. We'll see if the temp gauge comes up. That rear light works. That light works. Wow, we got lights. That's pretty neat. Usually they don't have working lights on them. It is not charging though. Doesn't look like it. Making on camera. The engine sounds good. The governor's a little bit off. It might just be the nature of these. I'm used to an Alice Chalmers governor, which are always really snappy. I hear a ticking sound, but I can't quite narrow it down. To me, I think there's a little exhaust leak somewhere towards the front of the engine, around cylinder 1. Good oil pressure. I don't think the temperature gauge is working. It doesn't appear that the generator is charging. Sounds like a little exhaust leak. Not too worried about it. It does not seem to have any blow-by, which is surprising to me with the engine being seized. Something that's got to happen is moving this seat back. Whoever must have run it must have been short. They got it all the way forwards, and I don't know why, but it seems like every tractor I buy, the seat's all the way forwards. Ouch. finger was in there. It's going to call it good and go to the back too. I'm sure that's where we'll want it. Oh yeah, that's way better. Well, after a quick search on the interwebs, it turns out that this right here is my check plug, and I believe that's actually a transmission hydraulic filter. So that's cool. You know, sometimes people have the same questions and you get lucky. Got an 8-point socket, if I can shimmy it in there. That's the one. You know, sometimes the right tool for the right job is worth having. Pretty much all we're doing here is just taking this out. It's just like the engine, where this is your check plug. So if oil comes out, you got enough oil in it. Whoa, and it's coming out. Oh, and I can't get it back in. Ah, crap. It was easier to roll the pan under it than to get the plug back in. That's a bit over full. It's dirty, but not water contaminated, which that was my fear. So I'm gonna let the excess come out of there and then put the plug back in. Well, now that I get to thinking, I put that plug back in real quick. There's this plug over here, and that's above the hydraulic valve. So I'm wondering if that's your level plug, and that's the plug you can drain the level down to change the filter. Okay, I think I've got it figured out. This one down here is the gear oil for the transmission, and this one here is for the hydraulic oil in the rear housing. And then this, there's a divider in this casting right here. This is the hydraulic fill, this is the transmission fill. This was way over full and this is low, so I'm wondering, I'll top it off, but I'm wondering if it's common to have a seal in there go bad and have oil push from the hydraulic into the gear housing. I bet that's what has happened over the years, maybe. Since the rubber was pretty much junk on this band, I just cut a piece of thin rubberized cork. I do believe this is in good enough shape that I can put the hood back on for now, and I can drive it, move it around, get it out of my way without too much issue, and we'll work on some other projects without this thing taking up all of the space. That's what I'm talking about. Now she looks right. That's the tractor I thought looked cool in the auction lot that day. Well, to save you some boring clips, I've been checking over this charging system, and I found a couple one of the wires, the one on the armature side, had a bare spot. I fixed those. This fuse was blown, so I bypassed the fuse, which might not have been a great idea, but I was checking to see if I could get the thing to charge, and it's not charging, and when I can get it to kick in, it's pulling power. I polarized it correctly. It's still pulling power. It's getting, generator itself's getting pretty hot. So I pulled the belt, and it's not really motoring at all when I power up the armature. So I think we've got an issue internally in this generator, and that explains why the charging wire that used to go to the battery was unhooked from the lead. This was completely disconnected from the loop in the nut on the positive side. So I'm guessing that was an issue before, and they just unhooked it to keep it from drawing the battery down. But for now, I'm not too worried about it because this is magneto ignition, so the only thing we're doing is starting it with the electronics. So once it's running, we're good to go, and worst case we got to pull start it. So let me see if we can get some fluid in those brakes. I got the caps pulled on the master cylinder. Sorry, I tried to video more of this, but there really isn't much room. Looks like this one on the right, the little ear is busted off, which isn't the end of the world. But this drum is so greasy. I think part of that is oil, but I'm sure part of it is brake fluid too. This one over here is dry as can be. So I'm going to see if I can add some fluid to these. They make it really easy to get to the bleeder though. Way back in there. I don't know if I'll be able to film that. How to break this loose without rounding it off. Well, I kept messing with this brake here, tried to bleed it, tried to blow through it, tried to bleed the master cylinder, tried the other side. I believe both of the pistons are stuck in the master cylinders because there is like just, you know, you can feel like no drag there. So I think that the pistons are stuck, so the master cylinders are going to need rebuilt. I have to put new slave cylinders on it, and probably have the shoes relined at the same time. That's going to be a video in itself though, because I think I mentioned this before. This whole cast center is the brake drum, so that's all got to come off. This big nut in the center's got to come off. It's a press fit deal, tapered shaft I believe. So it's going to be a big job to get that done, and may involve a couple other items to do here. So, but we still have the handbrake, we just won't have turning brakes, so we can stop. It's a little clumsy, but stopping and parking's no issue. So no charging, no brakes, but I'd really like to see this thing get put under a load and work it a little bit and see what that engine acts like. I did notice a little bit of oil coming around the spark plug on cylinder 3. That's the one we were really seized on, I believe. So we may have a little bit of a stuck ring there. I got it up to temperature earlier, but to really put it under a load would be a good thing, I believe. There's a tractor show kind of local to me, and it's happening this weekend, and they should have a proning brake and maybe a PTO dyno there. So I think we're gonna haul this up there and see if we can put it through its paces. Nice feeling when they actually load themselves on there instead of being winched or pushed on. Well, we got it at the tractor show. We're gonna run it on the dyno. See what it does. Well, there you have it. Got the old LA back home. Didn't break anything. Doesn't even really seem to be leaking from much. Got this leak here that seems to be coming out of the air cleaner. I'm not sure why that's leaking or where exactly it's leaking from, but that's looks like that, maybe a little out of the rear main. It did good. We ran around on it all day. Even met some of you guys that watch these videos. That was nice, but she didn't get hot. It didn't break down. Brakes were never an issue. Got to put it on the dyno. Got to hook it to the pulling sled, which wasn't much. The track was so dry and sandy in that spot. It was loose enough. She didn't really pull too hard. But overall, tractor proved to do really well. Besides drinking a lot of fuel, we topped it off on the way up there. Drank $95 worth to get it close to the top. So what's in the future of this thing? Probably nothing really right away. I'm gonna try to enjoy it a little bit. I do need to get those brakes done. That's gonna be a winter project when I got some extended time in the shop to have it there. That'll be a video in itself. I do need to check out the, I believe it's this shaft right here. It's making more noise than it should. I don't know if the bearings are going bad or if I can shim them. I believe right here, and it looks like there's some shims left in it. There's a gap there. If I pull this off and take a couple shims out, I believe I can tighten that up. I got some better manuals for it now, so I'll have to check that out. But overall, making 60, somewhere between 61, 62 horse on the dyno. Can't complain about it. Ran it around all day. Number 3 that it was stuck on was pushing a little oil early on. Then once we put it on the dyno, seemed to clear right up. So there was a ring that was still hanging up on that piston, I think, and getting her up to temp and working it hard for a few minutes seemed to do the job. Well, I hope you all enjoy following along with this old tractor and the process it's taken to get this thing from an auction find with a seized engine and getting it running and putting it to the test and making sure everything's working okay now. I appreciate y'all following along. It helps support saving this old junk. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. We'll have more of that to come. Leave a like and a comment. That helps out as well. But I appreciate y'all watching, and we'll see you on the next one.